So solar power is really not going to work at this time for some of the practices that we do. Like when I said we have a combine that puts out 550 horsepower of power, it's not enough. The amount of batteries we would need to make that viable, it's not possible. That being said, there are some new solar power technologies. So we've now put solar panels on our chicken barn. So probably about 60, anywhere from about 30 to 60%, depending on the day, is coming from solar power now to run the powered equipment. Everything within the barn is, other than our generator, is electric based. So I see more farmers doing that as time goes on, especially as some of the energy prices go up. So I think some of those things can be integrated, and some of those, I think it will take a lot more time to figure out how we do things. But at least for right now, just the sheer power, my tractor that I pull, 550 horsepower, the weight of batteries I would need at this time, the technology is just not there. Think we still have a little bit of that old viewpoint that it's just, angry farmers with pitchforks, right? And it's not the case. Like, I think of so many interesting, innovative careers that you can do in agriculture, whether it's on the science side, the technology side, marketing side, right? Transportation. There's so many different jobs that are available in agriculture. And a lot of people don't realize 1 in 8 jobs in this country are dealing with agriculture, and it's a huge industry. And just to take interest, if anybody's interested, pretty much I think every province now has an agriculture in the classroom organization. Just go to their website and look at some of the different careers that are open. But it hopefully will inspire some of those individuals to take some careers in agriculture. It's actually a really good question who asked that, because the tightness in your wallets that you feel when you go to the grocery store is a direct relationship to the energy issue. So if you roll back time back to the early part of 2022, right when the war was starting to go on, it was a cluster of many bad things happening. So the war was going on, meaning the importation of some of those fertilizers and products out of Russia were not going to take place. We knew that. We had some issues with some of the nitrogen facilities down in Louisiana, where a good chunk of the nitrogen gets developed. As a result of that, the prices went through the roof, and by through the roof, my average price of fertilizer in 2021, I think, was $61 an acre, and it went up to $148 an acre in 1 year. So as a result of that, all the markets had to adjust, and meaning, the commodity prices went through the roof, and we were just going through a drought in Western Canada and the northern US. So it just amplified everything, pushed the prices huge up. And now things are starting to fall back down. I've noticed my fertilizer prices are going to be closer to about $110 an acre this next year. So they've dropped quite a bit. And the commodity prices, as I mentioned, I watch them a lot. They're tanking right now. So the price of canola back in the fall time would have been around $19, $20 a bushel, and it's around $15 a bushel right now. So it's dropped about 25%. I would assume as those commodities start to trickle through, you'll see an easing of the grocery store prices. But to be frank and fair, once consumers have already been exposed to higher food prices, they very rarely go back down to the previous levels. Honestly, because I think the organic industry did a better job of marketing it. right? It was always out there in the forefront, and the initial conversation was, this is bad, so using these synthetic things are bad, organic is good. And really at the end of the day, like organic or conventional, the differences in the nutritional content of that food, it's very low, the differences. In fact, in a lot of instances, there's no statistical difference between if you choose one or the other. If you choose to buy organic, that's your choice. If you choose to buy conventional, that's your choice as well. The difference is in the practice. And because of the marketing campaigns to differentiate products, it kind of turned some individuals against, and realized during that same time, there was a lot of negativity around companies like Monsanto, right? Big bad multinationals, and different comments around genetically modified crops, and all these things that took place. So it painted the picture of commercial large-scale farming as bad. But as you can see, like a lot of those technologies that we have on our farm, they're not cheap, right? So if I only had 160 acres of land to farm in Saskatchewan, it's not sustainable. I cannot buy that technology on that farm. I need to have the bulk of land to make sure I can spread it out over more acres to make it economically viable. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to discuss more of. Again, not to discredit any other practices, but make sure people understand that, a lot of what we do is very sustainable, and it's just not known what we do. So. So yes, I do. One, and on a few different levels. One, on your own individual level, I always encourage people to grow their own gardens, right? If you have an opportunity, and again, it's twofold. One, you get to experience growing and the weather, right? Because now you're at the mercy of the weather, unless you have irrigation, which I guess a lot of us will irrigate it if we needed to. But you can taste the fresh fruit. But you're also going to have a better understanding of some of the pests that you have to deal with. So for those of us who have had to pick potato bugs or pull weeds in the back garden before, think of that now on 4,400 football fields. Now you understand why we use some of that technology to pinpoint and only kill that, thistle and let that canola grow. I think it gives urbanites a better understanding. Now, urban farming on a larger scale basis, I just toured my first vertical farm in downtown Calgary a couple weeks ago. And I tell you, that was probably one of the best experiences. So I love going on farm tours anyways, but that was such a great experience to see how they can actually influence the growth of produce. So they were looking at tomatoes and strawberries and different things that downtown Calgary will need for restaurants or food stores. And they can influence by the different UV index of the lights. And it's controlled through computer systems that ensure that that crop continues to produce that fruit or that vegetable. And I thought to myself, this has the power to fundamentally change our reliance on possible, produce from California, right? So if California has a drought, it affects all of North America. But if we have the ability to grow some of that food efficiently in different urban areas, I think it's going to be excellent. So I'm nothing but a huge supporter of that. Yeah, so it's interesting. So if I go back, so I graduated high school in '96. Okay, so before many of you were born, and I think of the technology then, and GPS really hadn't even come in. Like that wasn't a thing yet. And now we're to the point where every piece of equipment we own, it has to have global positioning and the auto steer on it, or it doesn't work. Like it's like everybody has to drive a Tesla. You don't have a choice now because everything's so precise on how it's driving that you never want to take the wheel of it, because just my slight movement one way or the other way messes up my field. So you have this perfect kind of precision agriculture that exists. Now, looking forward into the future, what does that mean? Like some of the things that we're going to be doing in 20 years, I'm going to look back at the practices we do now and say, that was, caveman style, right? Like I can't believe we did those practices. I see that on the spray technology, as I mentioned, with different sensors to actually identify weeds and make them kill them to make sure the crop grows. The other thing is, like I look on, so those are the tool sides that farmers can use, but the genetic side. When you look at gene editing or CRISPR technology, some of these technologies where you can actually take genes out of plants or put genes in that make them more resilient to drought, more resilient to flooding, the possibility of different plants fixing their own nitrogen so they're taking it out of the air and fixing it. We already do that with pulses, things like peas or lentils or soybeans. But maybe there's an opportunity to do that with some of the other crops. And I don't know, I'm not I'm not a scientist, but when you think of some of those things to greatly reduce our need for fertilizer, but still getting the production, those are huge innovations that will fundamentally change agriculture going forward in the future. And that's why I think it's such an interesting, and that's why I have so much passion for it, because it truly is such an interesting area of interest, which hopefully more people try to get in, because the more people that are in it, the more innovation we're going to have. Yeah, so one of the other things, the regulatory system has just become better in Canada, and can identify some of those risks ahead of time. So every product that we use has to go through the regulatory process to get approved, to make sure that it's not only safe if there's certain residues on the food, but safe for the people who are using it as well. So, we always make sure we're wearing protective equipment when we're handling some of these things, mainly on the herbicide, fungicide, or insecticide side of things. But really, it goes through a long process to make sure that, if it hits the soil, does it break down? How long does it take to break down? Like, what's the half-life of these products? So, and again, that's not my strong suit, but I know I have confidence in the CFIA and Health Canada when they do their random testing on products to make sure that everything is safe for consumption. So again, getting back into some of that discussion around say organic or conventionally produced food, they all have certain residue amounts on them, regardless of what they are. It's just inherent in our system right now for logistics. However, they're all within the minimum, the requirements that are set out by CFIA. So I think, therein lies a discussion piece that over time, these products have gotten safer. I know if you go back to the like Agent Orange or DDT or things like that, they're not in use anymore, right? Because they've found the effects of them, and the regulatory process to approve them has become more stringent to make sure we don't have situations like that again. So it's kind of an all overarching question, but I think there should be a lot of pride in what we produce here. And really, if you have an opportunity to talk to a farmer, take that opportunity. I've never met anybody, young or old, who's farming who isn't proud to talk about the products that they produce. Everybody's so happy about what they're doing, and the fact that they're growing food for Canadians and people around the world. I really think that the best interest in mind that they have, or we have, example on our farm, is to grow healthy food for others, and realize, like, we eat our own food as well that we grow. We eat our eggs, I'll take mustard and eat that, or wheat, or whatever we have that we're growing. We consume it too. I have this cute little video of me combining with my daughter, and she's saying she's going to be a peace farmer when she grows up. And the irony in that is about 2 weeks earlier, we had sprayed that field with Roundup to dry down the weeds and kill them. And we ate those peas in pea soup later on. And I have no problem feeding that to my family and my little girl, because I know it's safe. And I think that's really one thing to leave with all Canadians is there's a lot of pride and a lot of safety that goes into what we do. So it's interesting. So, and I know, Lily, you mentioned you're from Cowanus, First Nations, and I've had the privilege of listening to your chief talk a few times in person about some of the, I would say, injustices that took place, especially when you go back into the late 1800s, and him talking about, the progression of farming that was taking place on some of the different reserves. It's interesting. If you think back to some of the practices of the past, we're kind of doing some of them now. So if you look at the regenerative side, there was a lot of emphasis placed on, the earth and making sure that it would provide for us. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of that soil in a holistic way. So not only looking at what it needs to grow today, but what it needs to grow tomorrow. And one of the questions that I see just up here around fertilizer is, you have to realize we're taking nutrients out of the soil every year, right? So in the form of wheat seeds or canola seeds or corn, whatever it happens to be, we're taking them out because that crop's growing. If we don't put nutrients back into the soil, we're depleting it over time. And that's one of the things. If you look at, back in the grazing days, right, with the bison would go through and clear off all the grass, and they'd leave their manure on that to help rejuvenate that pasture, the grasslands, right? And I look at what we do now with the cattle industry, and they rotationally graze. Like it's the same idea. So I think a lot of these, I guess you could call new practices, really are just old practices rejuvenated, right? And we're kind of using a lot of the same things that maybe have been used in the past, just with newer technology. So I think we can thank the Indigenous cultures for that, and some of that, and just understanding that it kind of is coming full circle. So
that is such a fantastic answer. In the interest of not taking up your whole afternoon here,
I could talk for
wrap
hours.
it up there. Well, we really appreciate it. Between your presentation and all of your answers today, they were just fantastic. So
Excellent.
It was really, really great having you.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's awesome. We're excited to share your podcast as well and check that out. And looks like some great content for us.